depending on how today works out. You can also go on YouTube and watch the last one because the president of Mass Retirees was here last time and was able to answer a lot of the questions on the WEP and GPO. The WEP and GPO applied to people who worked that received a public pension, but also had worked outside of government, you know, for a separate company or something like that. And depending on how many quarters you had in Social Security, it might or might not, those provisions might apply, and your Social Security earnings would be deducted from your government pension. And some people were really hit very hard. Last time when Frank Valeri was here, who's the president of the Mass Retirees Organization, he told us that originally it applied to, back in the 80s, it applied to about 1 million people nationwide, either one of those provisions, the first one or the second one that applies to survivors. And currently, there are about 3 million people that it applies to. The good news, and again, the reason that we wanted to do this is anything that relates to retirement or pensions, Megan and the office will generally get a call, or those of us that serve on the retirement board run into people at the store or whatever, and they'll say, what's this all about? Why does this? And the reality is that finally, after 40 years, Congress, right at the end of the year, the House of Representatives passed a repeal of those two sessions, of those two sections. The Senate also repealed both of them. And President Biden, before he left office, approved the legislation. The good news, too, is that President Trump, even before that was all done, had expressed his approval of this provision. So there's no real concern that, you know, the two presidents will disagree on it, and one will approve it and the other one will repeal it. Anything can happen, but we don't expect that to happen. So what that means is, for the people that were affected by this and had that deduction taken out of their government pension, of the one that we send you, it will be back to the first of the year of 2024, the first of last year. The difference in the two will be calculated for each of those 3 million people individually, because everybody's deduction is different. Everybody's amount is different. There's no one in the room, no one among the 3 million people that it's exactly the same. So those calculations have to be done individually. Originally, before the administration changed, they were saying that it would take a month or two to make the calculations. And there was plenty of press on it. You probably read stories about it, especially if it affected you or affected somebody that you are responsible for. The problem is that now, I mentioned this to a couple of people beforehand, the current administration is doing a lot of changes throughout the government. And Social Security, which administers this program, has already been told that they were, even before the administration changed, they were underfunded and understaffed. A year ago, that was true. It's reality. Now the new administration comes in, and as you know, they're making changes throughout the government. Whatever you think of that, it's a fact of life. So the concern is, how is this going to affect that agency? And on a personal level, to those people that are affected by either one of these, what does that mean for those 3 million calculations that have to be done? The reasonable person would say, if you're cutting an agency that's already underfunded and understaffed, well, what are we talking about, a month or two? It's probably going to take longer. And the latest stories that I've seen, and you've probably seen, is it could take up to a year to make those calculations. The good news is, if there's any good news, at some point, the amount of your Social Security check, the amount of your pension check, that deduction will go away. So your pension check will be made whole with that deduction no longer applying to it. And the other thing is that you will get the difference back to a retroactive amount back to the first of last year. So that, you know, it's, and because we were getting a fair number of questions about it, we thought it would be helpful to have a session like this to tell you as much as we know and as much as we've heard about the changes that are being made, and also promote the organization that Frank Valeri, who was here last time, and Sean Duhamel, who's due here today, I hope, who's the CEO of the organization. It's an organization of retirees in Massachusetts and some active employees. You can join as an active employee. If you join as a retiree, the dues, I think, are like $46 a year. They represent 52,000 retirees in Massachusetts. And it's an organization that is totally focused on representing retirees and representing us at the State House, on state legislation, which applies to all of us and survivors, and with the federal government. I mentioned the president signing that legislation on January 6th. Sean, the fellow who's due here today, was actually at the bill signing and had a picture taken with the president, because the Mass Retirees Organization, along with a lot of other organizations representing retirees, has been working on this basically since it was instituted. The first president of Mass Retirees, a fellow named Ralph White, who preceded Frank Valeri as the president, was actually lobbying against that legislation 40 years ago, when the Speaker of the House then was from Massachusetts, and that was Tip O'Neill. And Tip O'Neill was in favor of it, not because it was going to hurt people, because they didn't think it was going to. They really didn't know how it was going to affect a lot of people. And they were trying to make Social Security benefits more fair as they applied to everyone. Unfortunately, this is one of those unintended consequences where it affected a lot more people than they thought it would. So the organization, I'm an advocate, but I'm not a paid sponsor of the organization. I just think that as a retiree, for myself and my family, it's worth being a member of this organization to support the work that they do. They put out a newsletter on a frequent basis. They send out, Sean does updates every week. He does a video every Friday. They have local meetings in the different regions. The local one in our region is usually at the Peabody Marriott, and I believe it's scheduled in May, but if you look on their website or get their mailings, it'll be in there. Let me get a couple of general questions answered first. How many people in the room are retirees currently? Okay. And how many active employees? Okay. And any veterans in the room? Okay. One other thing that you may want to do you need me for anything, or you just?
Well, I did just want to say I just got off the phone with Sean, who was going to be here to present and answer questions. Unfortunately, he's had an emergency, so he's not going to make it.
Okay.
I have asked.
We were trying to get up the video from last week.
Okay.
So once that gets up here, if you log in and get that up, if you want to take over the controls there, just fast forward over and you can start whenever.
Okay, if you can get it started, that'd be good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That'd be great. Okay. So, if you've ever done live theater, or a live meeting, this is what it's like. Megan just verified that Sean apparently had a family emergency, will not be here. But what we can do, and Russ from IT and Dennis, they're going to get the video from the last session, which runs probably about half an hour, with Frank's presentation and a lot of the questions that came up then. And I think that will be helpful to people that can get questions then. The other thing is, and I mentioned this to people before, if you have any specific questions about your pension, your retirement, Megan is here from the office. We've had a change in the office. I was talking to Rick about this earlier. When Barbara Wells retired, we hired somebody as her replacement. We interviewed a bunch of people. We hired somebody as Barbara's replacement. She was here since June, I think, and about a month ago, she resigned to go somewhere else. So we are once again in the process. The good news is we advertised the position as it's the executive director of the Beverly Retirement Board. And we advertised the position. Kevin Smith, who's the deputy in the fire department, is the other elected member. Kevin and I served as a screening committee to go through all the applications. We got about 22, I think, altogether. We got it down to 3 finalists. We have a special meeting scheduled this Thursday of the retirement board to interview those 3 people. They're 3 very strong candidates. We could hire any one of them, and we'd be, as retirees and families, we'd be well served. We'll make a recommendation to the full, we made a recommendation to the full board. The full board will vote on it. We have a regular meeting that night, so hopefully within a week, we'll be able to name a new executive director to take over, to run the office, and it's a 2-person office. So there's the executive director and the assistant director. Megan is currently acting as the director, so she's wearing both hats.
Yes, is she one of the 3 candidates? That would be wonderful. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yes, ma'am.
Wes, I had heard from a couple of friends who are teachers who said that there's a form to fill out, and I spoke with somebody at the Social Security Administration a couple of weeks ago, and they said there is no form, so I'm confused about that, but the woman I spoke with said expect to find out around April.
Okay. A form to get,
To say that you are eligible for these payments, whether it's WEP.
that was a question that Frank got asked, which should be on the video. Is that the survivor? Good morning, everybody. Okay. If you want to skip past my part, so we're already introduced Frank. And you'll be up on the monitor? Okay. John?
Question, you mentioned if it came out of our pension.
Yes.
What if it came out of our Social Security part of our pension? Ours didn't come out of our pension. They didn't deduct our pension.
I think I got it mixed up. I think you're right, it came out of the, I'm sorry. Your Social Security, if you were getting a Social Security check, it came out of that. That's why we rely on the experts. And the answer to your question, ma'am, I know that was a question that was asked last time, so I think it'll come up then. It's a particular situation for, I think it's survivors, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not sure. The form, Sean did want me to let all of you know that by the end of this week, they should be releasing some more information on how Social Security is going to implement this. So you can find that information on the Mass Retirees webpage, Social Security's webpage, and I will also try to get that on our webpage. So hopefully maybe that will be a question that's answered in this next bit of news coming out this week.
Small question. You mentioned that checks are going to be changed. Every week it's coming up. Months later, it'll catch up. So is that going to be weekly, or is that going to be 3 checks down the road?
Originally, that's what I was saying. Originally, the question was, when would your pension check be corrected? No, your Social Security check be corrected? And the answer, right. Right. It's, it depends on when those calculations are done. Originally, they were saying a month or two, but because there's 3 million people involved and they're going to have less people to do the calculations, it's going to take longer. They're saying maybe a year, and then, but it'll, you know, it'll come. It's just, it's going to take longer than they anticipated. For Beverly, Carol Ugalevich is the ex officio member. She's the longest serving member of the retirement board. The acronym is WEP in of money. And some people, this organization, my apologies, this is live, like I said, this is live theater. What I'm hoping we can do, the fellow to my right in the last session is, I mentioned, is Frank O'Leary. He's the president of the Mass Retirees Organization. He and Sean, who was due here today, are the experts on this. And I think taking the time to watch this, you could also watch this on your own, but we've got it and it's available. Thanks to the IT guys and Kim from BevCam, and you'll be able to see what we did last time, and then we can stop it at some point and answer other questions if you have them. Let me get some lights. Which now has 50,000 members. Retirees from municipal, county, and state government in Massachusetts, represents us and represents you as active employees to the state legislature, to the federal government, and does a tremendous amount of work. I think the dues now are $52 a year. It's the best $52 you could spend. That's enough. I'll let him do the pitch. The reason we asked for this session was because the retirement office is getting a lot of questions because people think retirement, they call the retirement office. We want you to do that. And while we don't have anything directly to do with the legislation, we're certainly aware of it. And as a benefit to you, and we're going to have another session, Carol, I think it's on the 24th at 11 in this room for anyone else that wasn't able to attend this morning. There was a mix-up on the mailing that went out. I didn't get mine, but I knew it was happening, so here I am. So there'll be another session, and we are recording this. BevCam is broadcasting it live on their channel 6, and it'll be available on the YouTube channel anytime people want it. And we will make sure that people know about that. So that's enough for me. Frank Valeri, as I mentioned, is the president of the Mass Retirees Organization. He lives pretty close, but he said the last time he was in Beverly, Bruce will appreciate this, was playing baseball against Beverly High School, I guess. Recently, you know. But
actually, I forgot. I was a high school basketball coach at St. Mary's of Lynn. We played a state championship game at Beverly High School.
if you've ever
We beat Matt and you.
if you've ever seen St. Mary's of Lynn play anything, they're pretty tough. So anyway, Frank's our guest. He and Mass Retirees, Sean Duhamel, who's the CEO of the organization, who will be at the session on the 24th, have been working on this literally since the law was signed in the 80s. And Sean, who will be here on the 24th, was actually at the bill signing and had a picture taken with President Biden signing the legislation. So it was a big deal. The purpose basically is to give you as much general information as we can and is as available today. And then obviously, if you have any questions individually or privately, we'll stick around and Frank will stick around for a while. There is a handheld mic that Carol will carry around. So if you want to speak, just wait for the mic so that we can get you on BevCam and get your question answered. And as I said, if you have any, more personal questions or more private questions, I'm sure Frank can stick around and answer those as well. So without anything more, let me introduce Frank Valeri, and thank you again for coming. I'm sure it'll be a good session for everyone.
Wes, thank you. Nice to see everybody today. I want to thank Wes, the retirement board members, Carol, and the rest of them giving me the opportunity to come up here and see you and talk to you. It's been a busy, very busy last 4 or 5 weeks. As many of you know, that the news was very simple, that the law that's been on the books for 41 years, the two laws, the WEP and the GPO, were repealed on January 5th, signed by President Biden. And yes, Sean Duhamel, I'd like to correct Wes a little bit because of my history. First, I give you a little background of who I am and what the association is and how we've been involved with this movement. The WEP and the GPO was signed in 1983. And it wasn't intended to hurt public retirees in non-Social Security states, but it ended up doing that. The purpose of it was a Social Security reform package. And this provision, these two provisions, were rolled into this massive reform bill. And it was this association, my predecessor, I've been president of the association since 2013. I'm the second president. The first president was one of the founding fathers in 1969. And he built this organization up until I took over in 2013, and we continue to be the largest and probably the most effective, I would think, retiree association in the Commonwealth. It's certainly the oldest. Because in 1983, Ralph White spoke up against the favorite son, Tip O'Neill, who was Speaker of the House. He negotiated the whole reform piece and included this provision in it, not knowing at that time, because they did grandfather people in to a certain degree for a few years. But as time went on, it grew. It was a provision that affected public employees, not only in the 7 or 8 states that don't pay into Social Security like Massachusetts. You have Texas, California, Ohio, Massachusetts, Louisiana, Nevada, a lot of retired public employees from Illinois, all were affected. But as time went on, like Wes said, when I took over in 2013, there was just under 1 million people. Now there are 3 million people that are negatively affected. The two laws affect people who work, have a split career, earn enough credits, 10 years of credits in Social Security, and get a public pension. If you receive a public pension and you have enough credits to collect Social Security, you are entitled to it. But the provisions that were signed in 1983 took almost 40% or 45% of that benefit of Social Security away from you. The formula has always been structured to help lower income people. And there was a problem. They tried to address it in 1983. Public employees in non-Social Security states who also qualified for Social Security, they were getting an enhanced benefit than the same person in a Social Security state. They were getting more because this formula was skewed to help lower paid people. So when you went to apply for Social Security and you had service in both, they would look at only the years you contributed into Social Security. They didn't know what you were doing for the city of Beverly. They didn't know what you're doing for the Commonwealth of Mass. I worked for the Commonwealth for 38 years. I had very few quarters. I got my quarters as president of the association. I get a very small Social Security check. But you know, that's what they tried to do, is try to address the fact that you were getting an enhanced benefit, because when they look back at your lifetime earnings, they didn't know what you were making in Beverly. They didn't know what I was making in the state. So they showed up as zeros. All those zeros made your lifetime earnings pretty much a false zero. So your lifetime earnings showed as though it was a lot less than it really was, because you were making money at Beverly. I was getting a check at the state. Okay, so my earnings weren't zero. But because they were showed up as zero and they had no access to our data, you felt that you were getting an enhanced replacement value of your Social Security. So if you work 35 years, you're going to get the maximum benefit. If you get 10 years or 12 years, it's going to be a lot less. But when they calculate it at 35 years, and I only have 10 in Social Security, it looks like 25 of them were zeros. So therefore, I get a replacement value of almost 90%, like lower paid Social Security recipients get. Whereas actually, I shouldn't have been getting that. So in an attempt to try to address it, they went too far. In the calculation, they reduced the first $925 a month, I think it is right now, And they instead of giving you 90% of that, they only give you 45%. That's how they calculate your benefit. The end result is your benefit, your Social Security benefit, once you retire, is probably going to be reduced by 45%. Now, if you get 20 years of earnings, substantial earnings, and that's confusing, I know, but substantial earnings is higher than the amount you need to get quarters in Social Security. I think you can get 4 quarters a year now by getting $7,200 or $7,300 in salary for Social Security now. So, you know, the substantial earnings, however, in other words, you've got to have substantial earnings of over 23,000, I think it is now, 25,000, to be deemed a legitimate override of the WEP. So if you work 2 full-time jobs, let's say, and you work 30 years in Social Security and 30 years in government, and those 30 years were substantial earnings, not just credits, but substantial earnings, and the SSA webpage shows a chart by year what the substantial earnings are. If you get over 20, up to 30, it's gradual, your reduction is reduced. So the closer you get to 30 years of substantial earnings, you can be a legitimate double dipper under the WEP law. Fortunately, the WEP is gone. So none of that calculation is in effect any longer. Right now, you're just calculated as if everybody else like everybody else in the country would be calculating Social Security. And that's what the repeal for the WEP did. The other provision is called government pension offset. My wife's a good candidate. She was a lifetime career public employee. She like most people, she didn't get her 10 years of quarters. But under the Social Security law, it was designed to help spouses who might have stayed home all the time and never worked. They provided a benefit, which calculates out to about 1/2 of whatever your benefit is. So my benefits say it's $20,000. She's eligible for a $10,000 benefit as a spousal, whether she put her quarters in or not. Okay, that was wiped out because they set up a formula, the offset, government pension offset, whereby they take 2/3 of your pension, your public pension. Say if you get a pension worth $15,000, 10,000 of that is offset, whatever the spousal benefit is. In most cases, government pension offset today, because the average pension for public retirees at such a level, it eliminates the spousal benefit. So in Massachusetts, there was some 30,000 plus public employees affected negatively, and we're getting nothing to almost nil. Because there are some I have older retirees call me who get a very small check. And they went to work maybe part-time and they worked in the library before they get out, they get 15, 16 years in, they get a small public pension. That little offset doesn't offset the entire benefit, but it offsets most of it. So in most cases, the woman that call me, the elderly woman that call me, the surviving spouses, they're at an age where their husband is gone, they've been hurt significantly, and they only get enough maybe to cover the Medicare payment. And that's what was happening. But again, with the GPO repeal, it's not in play. So now my wife, who was getting nothing from Social Security, will now be able to apply for Social Security, even though she's got a smaller pension. She retired young because she had a mother that was sick. And so therefore, you know, her pension wasn't that great, and she wasn't eligible for anything of mine. But now she will be eligible for half of my pension. So those are the 2 laws. The windfall, remember, look at it as something that affects your own earned benefit. The GPO was a law that eliminated any spousal benefit or survivor benefit. If you are as a survivor now, thank God, with my wife, she would get only half now, but if I pass away, she'd get my full Social Security. Without the repeal, she would have got nothing. So that's how the older members that I have, as Wes said, we have about 52,000 members. We have membership cards that everybody gets when they renew. My home phone number is on the membership card. Everybody in my association, or my offices, our home numbers or contact numbers are on the card. People can call at any time. We get people that unfortunately, they get a letter in the mail on Saturday morning. They don't know what to do. They're panicking because Social Security contacted them. They owe $3,000 back. They call us. We don't mind that.
I called him this morning. I wanted to make sure that we were all set for this session. And I pulled out my card and looked at the number. I said, oh, here it is right here. And I called him. At this point, I know that the big questions that we've gotten and that people have and that, that Frank and the office, excuse me, in Boston have gotten is, okay, the president signed the law on January 6th, I think.
Yep.
When will the full amount be restored to people's checks that have been affected by it? When will those calculations be done? And how long is it going to take for all of that to happen? For the checks, for the monthly checks to be corrected to the amount that people should be getting of those 3 million people nationwide. And secondly, the law was made retroactive to January 1st of last year, 2024. So when will that retro money be calculated and available to people? And I think those are most of the questions that people are getting now, and part of the reason that we wanted to have this session. Before we get to that, on what's the WEP, what's the GPO, and the stuff that Frank talked about so far. Does anybody have any questions on those two things before we get into the implementation of the actual legislation? Carol's got the mic. Anybody? Okay. Yeah, Carol.
So, and I've got my mic. So what if somebody had, say, 32 years of service outside of the city of Beverly, and then had an additional, say, 12 years of service in Beverly? So vested in Beverly, but 32 years of Social Security income outside. Does it affect them at all?
No, no. As long as during the 32 years, there was substantial earnings.
And that number was what, 7,300 you said?
Right now, it's 73, but if you go back to like 1980, it's a lot less. You
Yeah,
know, it's
right.
indexed.
Yeah, a couple
So
grand. Yeah.
you need this, you know, a lot of people, we know a lot of people that are teachers and firefighters. They all sometimes work a second job.
Right.
You know, and they put in that many years and they have that kind of money they made. They would have been exempt. But there are 85,000 public retirees that have been wept in this state so far. So this law is going to help 85,000. And you know, I see most of you people are active. How many people are retired here? Well, most of you are active, okay? And it's going to help you tremendously. And what's happened over, the reason why it's increased from 1 million to 3 million today, because our workforce has changed. When I started in state government, I want to tell you, 1974, 75, okay, people who started for the state, stayed with the state and retired. The workforce has changed. People like yourself have worked in the private sector, have a partial career in the public sector, and contributed substantial earnings, and then you went to work in public sector, and you got vested and you got some type of benefit. So your workforce has changed. You have more blended workforce where people work in both public and private sectors. And that's why it has grown. Because as people get older and go to retire now, those people are saying, what is going on? How come my Social Security was cut in half? And it was something that people didn't quite understand because it really hadn't hit people to this generation. And like, you know, for instance, the 7 states, politically, we tried from 1983 to 2013 or 14 to do the full repeal. When I took over, it was my fault, I guess, but I redirected the mission of the association and said, this is crazy. I know this association. I worked in the State House. My background was I worked in government. I worked for the House of Representatives. I worked for the State Senate. I worked for the Pension Oversight Committee, PERAC. You know, that was my business. And I could sense when I started going to meetings, and I was like, Wes talked about our Peabody meeting. We have 200 or 300 people there sometimes. And, you know, I could see the people when my predecessor and Sean Duhamel, who was the point person in this law, would get up and talk about all the issues. Then when they talked about the weapon GPO, I could see the members say, yeah, right, rolling their eyes. It's never going to happen. It's 30 years. It's not even getting out of committee. It wasn't even out of committee for 30 years. So I made a decision to look at maybe a reform piece to try to get something for people back. Something would give people an increase per month. And we worked very close. And in the newsletter here, you can see I was down in 2022 in December. We thought we had a chance of getting that bill out of committee and moving it over to the Senate. You know, it was very disappointing, and I was discouraged tremendously. And when the new Congress came in, I didn't really think anything was going to happen. until it developed. And it was like lightning struck. The stars aligned. Politically, it happened. And we have no explanation other than the fact that we know this is what we were originally supporting, but had to go and I guess reform was the way that I thought was a better possibility. To get that bill passed, you needed 60 votes in the Senate. It wasn't a majority of 51. It was a 60 vote margin. And because of that, we thought we had to go with the reform piece versus the repeal. But as the way things worked out, it came about. And it's helped a lot of people in the state. It's going to help a lot of active people too when they go to retire. You won't have to worry about it. My biggest fear is that Social Security reform is going to hit the waves again in a few years. And unfortunately, we don't know what's going to happen then, but right now we know it's repealed. So, you can go to the podium. You can go to the podium if you want.
We won't be able to pick you up. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay, you can stay right there.
We want to put you on the camera.
It's about the substantial income.
Yeah.
Isn't 32,000 for this year? It was 31,000, like, what
I'm
is
not,
that
I'm not,
number?
I'm not sure what it is. It's indexed, it's gone up. I think it's probably 25.
Well, I have it for 32,700
Wow.
for this year, 2025, 31,275 for last year, and
Yeah.
every year it increases.
Yeah, right. Well, you know why it hasn't, why it's increased substantially? Because over the last several years, the CPI index has grown tremendously. It's gone up 20% in the last 4 years, the index. Inflation has caused that number to go from 25 to 31.
Yep, but my question then is that the number that we have to come to for Social Security
No.
to have it be substantial in their
A
eyes?
substantial earnings number level is only used when you try to see if you're gonna you can be exempt from the WEP, when the WEP was in place. So you can forget about the substantial earnings now, because it's been repealed. There's no need. All you need is $7,500 a year in Social Security to get 4 quarters, and that'll qualify you. But remember, when they calculate your Social Security benefit, it's based on your lifetime earnings. So if you're only making $10,000 a year to get your 4 quarters because you're working part-time and you want to get your Social Security check, it's not going to be the full a big benefit like if you were making $60,000 or $70,000. So it's based on salary, it's based on average income. And all you need is the minimum quarters. 4 quarters, I think right now is about $7,300 to get 4 quarters a year. So you don't worry about the substantial earnings any longer. That's been repealed. The substantial earnings was put in to see who could be a legitimate double dipper, I guess is what the way to look at it. You needed that many years, up to 30. It was a sliding scale between 20 and 30. The closer you got to substantial earnings at 30, the more,
5%.
right. So, not to worry about that any longer. Now,
Any,
can I just mention one thing too?
Go ahead, Frank.
Our dues are only 46 now.
Oh, you stand corrected.
52.
I think Betty has a question in the back.
I think he wants to stand at the podium.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
We worked that out.
yes.
We've been asked to notify Social Security when you start collecting a pension so that they could,
Yeah.
reduce it.
Yeah.
Do we still have to notify them?
No.
Just
Let
let it go?
me go over this. There's a lot of scenarios that are out there that I think it's going to have some bearing on how soon it'll be processed and what you need to do and what you should do, and what you shouldn't do. First of all, if you are collecting Social Security from a spouse who passed away or a survivor benefit, and you're still working for the city of Beverly, let's say, that benefit probably, because you hadn't retired, was the full benefit. And then if you once retired with Wes and Carol with the city of Beverly, you should notify Social Security and they would reduce it. No longer needed, because now you keep the full Social Security benefit because the law has been repealed. Prior to that, you're right. You were required, if you didn't, they were going to back bill you anyway. So you had to. You don't have to worry about that any longer. Now, if you,
I'm sorry, are you good then? It seemed like there was a question that came up on the chat. I don't know if that's something that you can see there, or if it was part of the Google Meet chat, Wes.
I don't know how to
Russ.
do that.
Yeah, Russ. I meant Russ. So it looks like somebody put a question out on the Google Meet chat. Yes.
okay, let me just go over some scenarios, what, you know, to try to address, to find, you know, a lot of you people are active, so it doesn't apply, but for the retirees who lost money, in other words, if you were reduced, there's really not much you can do at this point in time. If you were denied or terminated, I guess, or denied a benefit, verbally or in writing, you need to call the local Social Security office. We're recommending that you call the local Social Security office and call and make an appointment to sit down and tell them, I want to make an application for my Social Security benefit that in most cases, is a surviving spouse benefit or just a spousal benefit. So it's one of those two. And, you know, if you have been reduced, you need to call and get an appointment as soon as possible. Wes mentioned the retroactivity.
Frank, excuse me, could I just, there was a question on the chat, I think you've answered it. Do they reduce your pension if you are collecting Social Security, or is it the other way around?
No, your pension is not reduced. It's the Social Security that's reduced.
Right, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you have been reduced, okay, you gotta wait until they process it. They're having problems with the staffing issues and some technology issues. They can't just flip a switch and get it done, unfortunately. So if you have been reduced, you've got to sit back and wait for it to be processed. It will be paid. It will be paid retroactive to January 1, 2024. So in some cases, for surviving spouses, it's going to be a significant check that comes eventually when they process. Now, if you were denied, but verbally or by letter, you need to make an appointment and apply for the benefit. I'm not sure, unless you maybe have a dated letter denying you, you could make a case with them, but I'm not sure how they're going to handle the retroactivity of those who were denied verbally. There's no record. There's no record. And you know, they talk about numbers in Massachusetts of 30,000 spousal benefits being affected negatively. I think that number is going to be much higher, because I think there's a lot of situations where people were becoming aware of it. They know because they were a public retiree, they weren't eligible for it. They didn't even bother applying. I don't think they know that how many people are out there like that. And I think there's going to be a ton that go in there and walk in and apply for the spousal benefit. Whether that's going retroactive or not, I can't tell you.
There was quite a bit of information in the press, and Mass Retirees Sean does a weekly broadcast that goes out to everybody every Friday, and the newsletter that you have a copy of goes out once a month. I think that was a special edition actually on this subject. But one of the things that they put out as a special message last week had a link to a fact sheet from Social Security that answered a lot of the general questions that people had. And they were saying things like, initially, they anticipated it would take a couple of months to do all these calculations, because if you think about it, even in this room, every single person's calculations are going to be individual. And if you're talking 3 million people, that's 3 million individual calculations that have to be done for people at a time when, even before all the changes that are going on in Washington now, Social Security Administration has historically been, and Frank can tell you, underfunded and understaffed. And that was before some of the things that are going on in Washington now, which you don't know what's going to happen then. So the latest thing is that month or two that it was going to take as an estimate originally is probably going to be longer for people to get the retroactive money and to get their monthly benefit corrected to what it should be. It will happen and it will be done, but the work of doing those individual calculations for 3 million plus people, it's going to take some time with all the other things that they do anyway. So the best information that we've gotten, and I think Frank can reinforce this, is to go on the Social Security website to look at the information that they've posted by them, so it's factual, and don't respond to, scams that come over the internet or anything that you see on social media or anything. You want to get your information from an official website like ssa.gov or like the Mass Retirees website and the newsletter and the mailings and like that. And the other thing is to call. I think, Dave, you have.
Quick question. Are our Social Security benefits figured on our municipal wages?
No, that's the reason that what was originally written for. Because our contribution, we don't pay into Social Security. There are several states where a majority of the public employees don't pay into Social Security. But the reason why it's grown is because there are other states. It's grown from the 7 states, and I think that's what got the impetus politically to get this done. Because like in Maine, the teachers are in Social Security, are outside of Social Security. In Connecticut, the teachers are outside of Social
So what is it based on?
Your Social Security? Your
The
Social Security is
payment.
based
How do
on
they figure how much I'm gonna make, Joe's gonna make? No.
was based on only your quarters that you paid into Social Security. You got to recognize your private sector contribution, private sector service versus your public sector service. And your calculation, as you know, for your public sector is based on age, service, and salary. Very similar to Social Security. Now, Wes is right that the latest link from the Social Security webpage is talking about a year plus, over a year now, to get these things recalculated. And that's going to affect those people, okay, that have had a benefit reduced. If you have to have a benefit recalculated, they don't have the capability and the resources, the technology to do it. They're going to have to go back and manually recalculate those 3 million people and readjust the benefits. Okay, now the survivor benefit and the spousal benefit I talked to you about, if you were denied and we've gotten members, believe it or not, who've gotten a check for surviving spouses because you're applying new, you're a new applicant. There's no adjustment to your current. So if you're getting any kind of Social Security check that has to be readjusted, it could take a year. If you're a spouse who was denied verbally or in writing, okay, you can now apply. I don't know whether the retroactive date applies to the January 1/24, the date of your application, but you need to make that application. You need to call the local office and set up an appointment. You may be on hold for a long time, but it's worth it. We've had members call us and say that they sat there on the phone, they finally get through, they set an appointment up. They called the day after the law was signed. And they set up, and they were surviving spouses. They didn't have any benefit. They just applied, and they're now getting a check from Social Security. And I didn't get much information from some of the members whether it's going to be retroactive or not. So it is working, and that's why I say you shouldn't sit back and take your time. You should, if you have been denied, have no benefit whatsoever, no recalculation that has to be done, you should make that appointment at the local office. And I think your regional office would be Salem.
Right.
So I think that's pretty much where we're at. Again, this was signed 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, and it's a huge task. And there's a lot of things, unfortunately, going on in Washington with the federal employees overall. So I don't know. I really don't know what the implementation is going to look like. But if you're going to be readjusted, you're going to be patient. It's going to happen.
Question there.
Is it on?
Yep.
I just want to be clear. I have retired for several years. I have been reduced for several years.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to call and get an appointment? or-
No. If you're a recalculation, in other words, you're getting money already. You're already on the Social Security payroll.
Right.
And you have to be recalculated.
Right.
They will get to it, but they got to do it individually.
So
Those are the ones like Wes talked about with the Social Security webpage indicated on that link. You should go on ssa.gov, and it's right at the top of the homepage. You can link into that a report. They tell you an update, and they're saying it could be up to a year for
And I
recalculation.
heard that recently on the local news that they said
Yeah.
maybe next April
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that I can just sit back and wait and they're gonna do it.
If if you've been reduced, you have to wait for the recalculation. It's gonna happen.
But they will initiate it. I don't have to initiate anything. Okay,
Do it.
thank you.
Other questions?
This
Just more a comment if I could. Wes, you mentioned it, and Frank, I did you as well, is just resources that are out there. So when we started to put this gathering together, I went to the massretirees.org. Is that the website?
Massretirees.org. And the newsletter that Wes, I think, passed out to everybody has a link to, if you want to join the back page here. The webpage is on the top. You know, we have membership, what we call associate membership. If you have more than 10 years of service, you're over 55 years of age, you can join as an associate member, which puts you on our mailing list, and you get this bi-monthly newsletter, as Wes indicated. It's just chock full of information. There are no advertisements in it, and it gives you a complete update. What you have here is a special edition that was done just to promote the repeal and the WEP and the GPO. It's got pictures back, and the front page shows how our newsletter looked a lot different in 1983. But in 1983, the headline was Social Security Amendments of 1983 reduce Social Security benefits for public retirees. It couldn't have been any truer.
Carol, your question.
Yeah, so there were, so when I went on the website, there are a lot of links that are really helpful. If you go in, you can see latest news, so you can kind of keep up with the legislation and where it is right through massretirees.org. So I found it really helpful.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah. We spent a lot of time on this voice that we do everything internally here. We have a small office. We all chip in and do the writing, get the information. I'm always calling the boards, asking them who the new members are. We update the board membership, things like that. But, you know, this is probably the largest change to public retirees in Massachusetts in decades. So for those who are retired and those who are active, it's a very positive movement, and we're thrilled that it finally took place.
Just any other questions?
Any other questions?
Just a couple of things real quickly, and we do have more coffee and donuts. You're welcome to take some. And just on behalf of the retirement board, I want to thank everybody for showing up. If you don't mind, we really would like to promote the other session that we're going to do for anyone who's interested in active employees, retirees, anybody, on the 24th, right here at 11 o'clock. I'm sure we'll have coffee and donuts again. I wanted to let you know, because somebody asked me this morning, we've had a couple of changes in the retirement office. As you know, we moved out of City Hall down to 275 Rantoul Street. It's the white colored building across from Gloria Foods. And currently, our executive director, and I wanted to let you know, because, can you get the lights, sir? Get the lights right up there. That was pretty much the end of the presentation. We did a couple of things to finish up, but hopefully it was worth your time to see the nature of the information. Sean, if he had been here, would have pretty much given you the same information. People might have individual questions that they would want to ask. And what we can do is, does anybody have any specific questions now that either Megan or I could answer? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
When I retired, I tried to collect, I went for spousal, and what they told me was.
Can you take the mic, Mary Ellen? Just so we can get you on the recording. The green light should be on.
It's flashing. Red and yellow.
Pressing hold button and the light will come on.
When I retired.
Yeah.
I asked about spousal and Social Security. I was told by our retirement and Social Security, I made more money than him, so I couldn't get anything. Is that still in effect?
I don't know. Megan, do you know the answer to that?
I didn't catch the question.
I can't hear you.
Can you repeat your question?
Pat, the question, Megan, the question was, she made more, when she retired, between the retirement board and Social Security, she made more than her husband, so that she wouldn't be able to collect anything off the spousal benefit?
So I think in that case, what Frank.
Stand right there, stand right there. There you go.
In that case, you're gonna wanna make an appointment, I would make an appointment with the office at Salem.
With what?
With the Social Security office over in Salem,
Yeah.
I would make an appointment to go over that with them.
And I checked on the website while we were listening, and if you go to that, the official, it's ssa.gov is the website for Social Security. Right at the top, it has two links. One of them is to make an appointment or find the local office. I know, I live in Beverly, so the local office for us is in Salem, but Frank, that was here last time, lives in Saugus. He would go to Lynn. So depending on where but if you put in your zip code, it'll give you the location and the hours of the local office, and also how to make an appointment. The second link, there's two, and they're right at the top. The second link is on the WEP and the GPO. And I just tried it just to see what it said. And what it does is it opens up a bunch of other questions, like frequently asked questions on the WEP and the GPO that you heard the presentation on. And a lot of the questions that you would have that may not have been answered, or that you might be individual, you can click on that link and it will give you the answers right there. So a lot of the information is right there, but the good news is you're not getting the information from, on the internet or in a newspaper article or whatever. This is the official Social Security website. The other one that Carol mentioned in the previous presentation was the massretirees.org. That's the Mass Retirees website. And they have a lot of links to other information too that will send you to the correct place to get your answers. And if you need to make an appointment, you can do it right on that website, on the ssa.gov website. And you can always call the retirement office. Megan will be happy. We get a lot of questions that are indirectly related to retirement, but people just don't know where to call. So they call the retirement office and see if we can help you out down there. So we just, we want people to get the correct information and not incorrect information. Does that answer your question, Mary?
I'm gonna talk to her.
Okay, all right. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I haven't started collecting Social Security yet, but I will be in October. And they send me a letter every year saying I have all my quarters, because I did 29 years in Beverly Public Schools. And it has an amount on there that I will be getting.
Yep.
And then in the fine print in the corner, it says, unless, you have a public pension, right? And so I wonder if is that number going to be true? Without the reduction?
It sounds like that statement that's on the form is outdated because of this new legislation.
Okay.
So I imagine that that statement that you got was done last year.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. The new legislation basically makes that irrelevant. If you have the way to verify the information would be to call the Social Security office. Where do you live?
Salem.
Okay, right in Salem. They're
Yeah.
on Congress Street. Give them a call and ask them. But I think that they would tell you, just like a couple of the questions that came up in the earlier presentation, the information that you got before January 6th when the president signed that bill,
Right.
it doesn't
Irrelevant.
apply anymore.
Okay, I
So
get it.
you should be, and certainly by, would you say, October?
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll have all that worked out. And the other thing you can do is, if you go on to, I should have mentioned this, if you go on to ssa.gov, you can set up an individual account for yourself that allows you to look up your own information, rerun those numbers. I'm guessing if you probably did that, if you haven't already done that, and run something that's effective today, it probably wouldn't have that statement on there because it's no longer effective. If they
don't ask you for your pension until you apply, so that number is a true number.
Yeah.
That number is a true number that you get until you apply your pension in the questionnaire, when you apply for Social Security,
Yeah.
you have to put down an amount. So they don't know that until he applies in October.
Okay.
So that number is probably his true number that's coming off the website.
And with the new legislation, it wouldn't be relevant anyway, right?
Well, as a new, the way it sounds, as a new applicant, he's gonna go right through.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he's not gonna have any.
yeah.
waiting period.
Yes, sir.
When the IRS sends you those statements at the end of the year, it tells you at the bottom line what you're entitled to for Social Security. It doesn't know you have a city pension.
Right,
So
right.
that's the number you're gonna get. Because in my case, I was gonna get $1,800 a month Social Security. Now I get about $800 a month, that's all. So I'm expecting to get the other $1,000 a month when this goes.
Retroactive to January 1st of last year. And, and you'll get the full amount will come when they finish it. Yeah. John? Excuse me.
On that presentation, they were mentioning that it would affect 45% of what you should have been getting. Right.
I,
I mean, in our case, we're getting, it's 60%.
yeah.
Is that supposed to be a standard of 45%?
I missed that, John. I'm sorry. I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
Maybe I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
They whack 60% off the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not 40%. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Well, I know ours is 60%, but he said they were using a figure of 40 to 45%.
Yeah,
I mean, is that gonna be the maximum?
I don't know. I don't know. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
60%.
They will no longer have out.
Yeah, you get back 60%, you get 40%.
That's correct. That's correct.
You're right. But you're gonna get all
what I
that.
get.
You're gonna get all that.
Survivor benefit, yes.
So I will get his whole thing, his whole Social Security.
Yeah?
And my pension.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yep. I think we're done. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for your patience with all the technology. I appreciate it.